What's up, everybody? It's the Brownwater Banter podcast. I am Jared Seymour.
I'm Joey Cates.
And we are here today with Jonathan Maisano from Maisono's Fine Wine and Spirits in Ocean Springs on Highway 90. We've been talking about doing this one for a while, man, and I'm so glad we finally got it going. As everybody knows, one of the backstories is the meaning behind Brownwater Banter. One of those meanings is brownwater, meaning bourbon. And whiskey too, but mainly bourbon. And we have someone here
today
who can actually talk intelligently about that. So first off, Jonathan, how you doing today, man?
Good, glad to be here. I appreciate you guys having me on the show, and I love talking about wine and whiskey. So
absolutely,
one of my passions.
Absolutely. I've been in your store, like I said, Ocean Springs, Highway 90, and dude, it is very, very cool. I went right to your bourbon aisle, took some video, looked around. Like the selection is legit. Like you got it going on.
Yeah, so the goal of the past 15 years since I opened up was to, put together an incredible selection of a lot of small family producers on the wine side. And, I always drank whiskey. So for me, that was an important focal point as well. We try to keep at least 200 on hand, 100 bourbons, 100 different scotches. And then I've been having a lot of fun going to Kentucky the past couple of years, picking out some Maisono hand select single barrels. So.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I've known you for a while. We're friends on Facebook, and I see all the travels that you do. Y'all go to the distillery you do and hand select this stuff. Like, what's the process there? And what do you contact these distilleries? Obviously, y'all have a relationship because you're selling their product, and you get to pick what you want, like these specific barrels before it's available to the public, right?
Yeah, so I'll take you back kind of a little bit of my starting process with this. So, like I said, I've always been a whiskey drinker. I started off studying wine, waiting tables and fine dining. Really found a passion for small produced,
which is where we met.
Yeah. Back in the day, another life
the
in
Beau
the restaurant
Rivage.
world.
Yep.
But I was really fortunate there, had a great sommelier, studied underneath, got the opportunity to meet a lot of incredible winemakers from all over the world, and realized that was what I wanted to do, was get out there, share these guys' stories, their passion with the consumers here on the Gulf Coast. Like I said, that was 15 years ago. About 6 years ago, I made my first trip to Kentucky. So when you're going to pick out an entire barrel of bourbon, you're getting anywhere from 160 to 200-ish bottles. So it's a big commitment. And 6 years ago, bourbon wasn't nearly as hot as it is today. So kind of knowing that if nobody else bought the whole barrel, I could sit and
you'd have a lot of whiskey
time.
left over.
I had a great customer who was excited when I told him I was thinking about going up there, and he said, "Well, find out how many cases I need to buy for you to go to get my own private label." And I called Four Roses Distilleries, who I was looking at, to go pick the first barrel. And they said, "Tell me if he buys 5 cases, we'll do it." So the rest is history. We got in the car, drove to Kentucky. And like I said, that was 6 years ago. I picked my very first barrel of Four Roses. I just picked my 100th barrel at Four Roses a month ago, so 100th overall barrel. So it was a big deal for me, and really exciting in 6 years to get to 100 barrels in one retail outlet here in South Mississippi.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So, dude, that's awesome. What's the process with that? I mean, you said you picked up the phone, you call them, but you had to get your palate trained up, like you said, with the wine background, to go up there and figure out what's going through your mind when you pick something out. Pick that out. Is it what you like, or is it only what you like, or what you think will sell? Like, how do you do that?
So for me, when I first started drinking whiskey, waiting tables, get off work, you started off Jack and Coke, eventually Jack and Ginger Ale, Jack and Water.
That is the progression too. That's the progression.
Jack on the Rocks.
Baby steps.
And,
yes.
One day, in about a week time span, I tried Knob Creek and Woodford Reserve, and that was it. After that, I was hooked on bourbon. Those two bourbons were so different in style and flavor profile. Woodford kind of being more mellow, had a little smokiness. Knob Creek is more big up front with 100 proof. A lot more oak, more kind of rich and robust. And I just loved the nuances between those two different brands. And that kind of started my passion of tasting through them and using my wine background. I think that's how I've been so successful in picking barrels. So when you go to the distillery, basically they'll roll out anywhere from 4 to 10 barrels. So usually we taste about 6 at a time. The master distiller, head of quality control, will pre-select barrels that they feel have reached, the proper maturation, the flavor profile, what they're looking for, and then they roll them out. And essentially, we go through the whiskey thief, we pull them out of each one, and we just sit down and taste them. I'll take notes, on the nose, go through, taste each one. If we're going to be cutting with water, I'll make those cuts with water as well, and just really try to focus on what stands out in each barrel, the flavor profile and the nose that's unique to me.
That you like.
Yeah. Now these are the same. This is the same whiskey in different barrels, right? But the same type of whiskey, same brand of whiskey, and you're trying all 10 different barrels of the same whiskey, correct?
Correct. The only time there's a little variance, somewhere like Four Roses, they've got different yeast strain mash bill combinations. So some might be high rye or low rye and different, yeasts in there. But for the most part, you're tasting essentially the same product, just aged in different warehouses, different levels. So, the higher you go up in the warehouse, you get into evaporation rates are different. So say you have a 7-story warehouse, each floor has 3 barrels on it. As you go up in height, the water evaporates out faster
because heat rises and it's going to be a little hotter up in the top.
Yeah, you can easily have a 20-30 degree temperature swing, in a 7-story warehouse from bottom to top. And I've been out there and gone up and down. It's incredible how temperature fluctuation is. So you can imagine you've got these 50-plus gallon oak barrels filled with White Dog in the beginning, and every time it gets hot, that whiskey swells into the oak. Right. Into these barrels, and every time it gets cold, it pushes back out. So on this barrel stave right here, you can see this red line or the soak line. That is the depth of penetration of that whiskey in and out over time.
That's a good quarter inch.
You mentioned,
you're going about halfway into the oak.
Absolutely. You mentioned, what did you call it? White Dog? Is that what you said?
Yeah, White Dog. So
let's start out for people that are, some people hopefully are listening to this are big bourbon whiskey aficionados. I would love for that. But what about the person who doesn't know anything about it, which was not me too much long ago as far as the process, right? So whiskey starts out, and we had recently on the episode the Yeasty Beastie guy come in here, Jason, talk about brew and beer. They kind of start in a similar path, and then beer branches off a little bit where alcohol goes into a different process, right? But they start kind of the same.
Yeah, the exact same way. They call it distiller's beer because you're making basically beer, and then from there you run it through distillation through your different stills, and you distill it down until you get high proof.
Okay. And for people that don't know, before bourbon gets its beautiful caramel brown water banter color, it starts off as, like you said, White Dog. So let's walk through that process real quick.
And kind of backing up even a little further.
Sure.
So the predominant grain to make bourbon is corn.
That's
right.
So
to make bourbon, it's got to be at least 51% corn in the mash bill. So the mash bill is essentially the recipe that they cook to make the spirit. So you've got to be at least 51% corn. Then from there, the next predominant ingredient is either going to be wheat. These are Maker's Mark samples, so they use wheat as their secondary grain.
Okay.
Or it's going to be rye. Most bourbons are rye, some are wheat, and then you're going to have a little bit of malted barley. Malted barley helps with a couple things. It helps get get the cook process going, help break down the sugars faster, and then it also gives you some mouthfeel and structure in there. So you're going to have a small percentage of malted barley. And then from there, once you cook that down, you're making White Dog. So White Dog is after you make your cuts of heads and tails, which are taking off the impurities, you're getting the cleanest part of the whiskey. And to go into the barrel, it can be no higher than 125 proof, which is what most distillers are going to go in. Some are going to run a little lower. It could be anywhere down to, maybe 108, but most of them are going to go in at 125. Obviously it helps out with cost because you're going at a higher proof. So as you're coming down, if you're going to have a 90 proof product, it gives you more fluctuation to water down to get to that product.
Okay.
But you can't go any higher than that. So yeah, White Dog is essential. That's your basic recipe you're starting out with, and everybody has kind of their own yeast strain, proprietary recipe that they start with, and then all the rest of the magic happens in the barrel after that.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. I like how the process starts out as pretty much salad ingredients.
It's really just simple.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, who knew that at the salad bar at Olive Garden you could start the process of making a bourbon?
I never knew it started out clear and didn't know that.
I did only because of recently having looked into this a little bit. But like you're saying, the magic happens in these charred oak barrels, right? And that's unique to bourbon as well.
Correct. So to be bourbon, one of the other requirements is it has to be brand new charred American oak.
That's right.
So you have to have American oak, and this is, like I said, a piece of a stave, and you can kind of see the width. It's pretty neat to go to Cooperage up there and you watch them make the barrels. They just have giant stacks of staves, and those guys it's all random. They just know the pieces in the puzzle, fit it together. The Coopers, it's incredible. I've seen it a couple times now. Then from there, the barrels are charred. Most are going to be a level 3 or 4 char, looking at 40, 45 seconds under intense heat, which is going to caramelize the wood, helps bring out just break down the sugars to help impact that flavor and get it deeper into the oak.
Really?
Which it's all about getting the whiskey in and out of the oak. Big part of why Kentucky has been, the birthplace and heart of bourbon is it gets really hot there in the summer like we have here, and it gets really cold in the winter.
which is kind of what we lack, right? A little bit.
Right.
We
So
don't
down
ever get the
here-
really cold. We just
Right,
get the really
it's summer
hot.
10 months
Yeah.
out of the year. So the problem with that is all your whiskey's going to evaporate and disappear. You need it to cool back down.
Can't have that.
Just
We cannot have
push
that.
all that whiskey back into the
Right.
barrel.
Right.
And like I said, when you go into a barrel, you're over 50 gallons, and when it comes out, and you may only get, a half a barrel, a quarter barrel, third of a barrel, depending on how much that evaporation, they call it the angel share, how much they drink. So you figure most bourbon is going to go, it's at least 4 years, and a lot of them are going to be, 6, 8, 10 years. So
Right.
that's a huge amount of loss over 6,
Right.
8, 10
so,
years.
I mean, if you have just a hot year, you could lose half your whiskey.
Yeah, it's so that's a big part too of why most bourbon, they've got all these different warehouses, like I said, different tiers. A lot of distilleries are going to have, anywhere from, half a dozen to 70, 80 warehouses from 25 to 60,000 barrels in each house.
Wow.
It's an incredible amount of whiskey and a lot of weight too. Barrels full, you're looking at 500-ish pounds.
Yeah.
I know that because I picked out a maker's barrel back in January, and they were taking bets on what the weight was going to be, and it was like 526. So
Yeah.
we waited after we filled it up.
There was not too long ago in the news. I don't remember where it was at, Kentucky or somewhere in there. Didn't one of those warehouses either catch fire and then a lot of those barrels spilled out into some local river or something like that? Yeah.
So there's been a couple issues in the last few years. Last year we had 1792 Old Barton Distillery.
I
they
had a bottle of that over here in the right over here off camera. Yeah.
So they
yeah.
had a warehouse collapse there and
Okay.
lost about half the. It was pretty neat to see the warehouse kind of cut in half. About
Right.
half the barrels dumped out, and then the rest of it fell a couple days later.
That's tragic.
So that ran into the river, and of course, you run into all the EPA, and
Yeah,
all the issues.
And then all that spilled whiskey.
A lot of happy fish for sure.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Yeah, dead happy fish. But yeah, that's crazy. I want to ask a question. Going back to what you said about stacking of, you say some of these distilleries, these warehouses will be 7 stories ish high, right? Do they keep if you're a ground floor barrel, do you stay ground floor, or do they mix and match and kind of rotate them around as a part of their flavor technique or their flavor profile?
Yeah, so that's a question I get asked a lot. How do you get, say, for example, something like Jim Beam White Label, right? Like, how do you get Jim Beam to taste the same today as it did 20 years ago, and it's going to taste the same in 20 years from now? So what they'll do is they'll intermingle from different warehouses. So they might pull 1,000, 1,200 barrels from all different warehouses, different tiers, and blend all those together to get a consistent flavor profile.
When you say blend, though, is that actually pouring them into a barrel together, or does that mean swapping them around
So
and
they're
they
actually
stay in
going to
their
blend
barrel?
them together. Maker's Mark will actually rotate their barrels, but they're one of the few distilleries. It is incredibly labor intensive to
Wow.
rotate your barrels. Yeah, for the most part, they blend them from different warehouses, different tiers. So you're getting different proof levels, different
Right.
evaporation rates, different ages.
To make a consistent flavor.
To make a consistent flavor. They're looking for the opposite of what I'm looking for, right? They want it to be exactly the same. Or when I'm picking a single barrel, I want it to be unique, and that barrel has its own specific flavor profile that stood out to me and is something exciting and stands out. The same token, though, you also may taste single barrels that you really dislike. So
Right.
I always tell people, I don't have to be the one picking your single barrels, but you want to go with someone that you trust. You trust their palate, whether it's a master distiller, if it's a store, a restaurateur, that you want to make sure that it's somebody that drinks whiskey, that loves whiskey, and knows the flavors, what they're looking for. I've had some really tough to drink single barrels that other people have picked out, and I think it's maybe just what they were looking for. I think a lot of people, if you're picking a bourbon that's going to be cut down in proof,
Okay.
if you're not cutting those down in proof out in the warehouse and tasting them, I've had barrels I really liked, and we cut them with water, and it's like, wow, it just totally falls apart. So
Really?
if you're not out there cutting those and testing them and tasting what the final product's going to be, I think that's might be a mistake that people make.
Yeah, you mentioned that you bring the water with you when you go to taste these things, right?
We do. So when we pour them out in the glasses with the Whiskey Thief, they'll kind of tell me like, hey, these barrels are running about this proof, or sometimes they'll know exactly what the proof is, and we'll add water kind of accordingly to try to get them down to what the bottling proof is going to be. If it was up to me, pretty much every barrel we buy would be uncut, unfiltered, no water added to it. But a lot of distilleries want something, kind of managing the proof on them, not picking them.
How do they
cash-strength.
proof them? How do they proof them in the barrel?
So with bourbon, all you're doing is adding water. They're basically just adding their water right there on the property back down to get it down to that proof of what they desire. And it doesn't take a whole lot of water to cut down the proof, but no other flavors or additives can be added for it to be bourbon. That's
Right.
another one of the regulations.
Right.
It's got to be. They really wanted to make sure when they decided to make bourbon the native spirit, of our country, they wanted to make sure they did it right, and
Right.
There was things put in place to make sure they protected the integrity of the whiskey and what they were doing with
Did
it.
Crown Royal get in trouble for tiptoeing on that at some point?
Well, I mean, Crown got in a little trouble, I think, with that. They had that bourbon mash bill
Yes.
labeled
They
bottle
labeled
that
it
came
wrong,
out.
yeah.
We mentioned that on
Yeah.
the
they put bourbon on the label.
way episodes ago, over a year ago, we talked about that. So yeah, and they had to take it off. They couldn't do that,
They had
right?
to put a label over it stating that this was not. It's not bourbon.
Okay.
That lasted about a half a day in the market before they went back and made them change that. I'm not really sure how they got that passed from the TTB.
Wow.
As specific as those guys are.
America. It's bourbon. It's ours. It's
Taking it
ours.
back.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Dang Canadians.
What so for you, what is your ideal bourbon as far as a flavor profile, proof? Like what are you looking for yourself?
So for me, personally to drink, I'm a big fan of, 110 to 115 proof. I think that for me it's a great proof because it's, for me, smooth enough to drink straight. If I decide to put it over a little bit of ice or add a little water to it, it's not getting too watered down. I always tell people, if you're buying higher proof, a lot of people get nervous. They get scared if they see, especially above 110 proof.
Yeah.
I just got my first 125, which is that the 1792. What is that called?
Full proof.
There you go. Okay, and I was a little nervous buying.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, we're
It'll sneak
playing
up on you a
we're
little
playing
bit.
with fire here,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, so the reason why they called that full proof is they're paying tribute to barrel entry proof being at 125.
Okay.
So they're cutting it back down. So if you're picking a barrel, for example, to be 1792 full proof, which I picked another one back in January. It'll be coming in here in probably another 2 months. They've got to make sure it's above 125. So
Right.
that's kind of one of the criteria. You've got to let them know when you're going in, like, hey, I want to go full proof, so they know to pick barrels above 125.
dang.
Wow.
So your target is 115-ish range.
Yeah, 115 kind
Okay.
of for me. So that is kind of, coming like right out of, kind of the center of a tier. But again, every barrel has its own magic. So I've tasted barrels. I'm like, oh man, this is probably coming out the middle. And it'll be up high, and
Right.
Yeah.
so it's there's so much to it. And I always tell people when they buy my single barrels, like, don't go home and drink all of them. Save some for the next one. So as you get multiple ones side by side, you can sit and taste them right next to each other side by side. And you can really appreciate the flavor profile and the difference. I have my wife blind taste my bourbon all the time at home in my barrel picks, just to go back and revisit them with no preconceived notion of, the brand, the warehouse. I don't want to know anything. Like when I'm picking the barrels at the distillery, all I want to know is where I'm at,
Right.
what whiskey we're tasting, and that's it. I don't want to know any other
Blind.
factors.
No biases.
Just going
You
in
don't want
blind.
completely
Yeah.
blind.
Yeah.
Because if you get into, I never forget when I went to Four Roses first time, I had like a specific, kind of recipe in mind, and which ended up being like my 7th favorite out of the 10 barrels.
Wow.
So you want to go in basing it off of what's the best whiskey in the glass. Like to me, what stands out the most unique flavor. It's not about the age. And I tell people, same thing with the price. It's not about the price either. If you taste them blind, people will be amazed what comes out as your favorite on top.
Well, I think they've done studies with wine, right? That the price really doesn't
No.
correlate with people's favorites on blind taste testings. I know there's some particular people's palates, especially like people who judge wine. I think they're more, obviously California-based palate, and then some of these other wines that come from different places sometimes maybe score lower because they're not familiar with that or that's not what they're looking for, right?
Yeah, and when it comes to wine, people always ask me like, what justifies a $10 bottle to a $100 bottle? And I always tell people, for me, and again, my personal, we're here to help people whether you want $8 bottle or $800 bottle.
Right, you're selling all of
Yeah,
it.
I mean, we're here equally. We're going to put the same amount of time into helping you find the right style of what you like, because everyone has a different flavor profile and preference, and that's my job, is to help guide you in the right direction, especially as I get to know each customer and what they like, so I make the correct recommendations next time. So for me with wine, the problem I run into with like $10 bottles of wine, even the ones that are really good, I get bored as I'm drinking through the bottle because it tastes pretty much the same. If you're buying, at least in theory it should be, if you're buying a more expensive bottle of wine, the winemaker has put more time into how that wine's going to evolve over time. So as it ages, it's going to get better. So same thing as it's open, you get more oxygen in there. It's going to open up, the layers start to come out.
Right.
It's probably going to have higher acidity, higher tannin levels. It's just going to have more complexity and character to it. So as I'm drinking through the bottle, I get to experience something different from the first glass to the last glass, which for me is a big part of price justification.
Okay.
Same thing with
I never
single
really
barrels.
thought about it kind of
Yeah.
that way, so that's cool to hear.
Yeah, same when I pick out single barrels. I want to make sure it's not too far removed from what the original product is, because you don't want somebody to go, this doesn't taste anything like what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But I also want it to be like, if you taste it, you distinctly know that, hey, these are Maisono hand select single barrels. There's something special about these. They stand out. It doesn't taste just like every other Old Forester, or Peerless or whatever the product may be on the shelf. And that's how I got so into it. Like I said, I got up there and I tasted the first set of Four Roses barrels, and I couldn't believe the barrel variants. And since then, I've tasted barrels, that aged maybe 8 barrels apart, same day's distillate, and had just different flavor profiles. And that's again, that
that's
barrel.
crazy.
Yeah.
just barrel variants.
You mentioned something that I've heard. Now that we're going to get in trouble again with a buddy of ours who was on the first Bourbon one, Sydney, who we wanted to get in here to be on this one, but we had some scheduling things, and this kind of happened quicker than I thought. He is a friend of ours who drank beer mostly, and then recently, last year or so, got into bourbons, and we talk about bourbons, text back and forth. He'll take some photos of what he's drinking. I'll send him some of my stuff.
He's got a bunch.
He walked into it, started tasting some stuff, and grabbed a bottle, like a specific bottle, drank it, thought something of it. We recently had this discussion. Put it up and left it for like months and months and months. And now he's went through all these other bourbons, right? And then I came to this original bourbon that he had, and I said, hey, man, have you ever had this before? I really like it. It's like, yeah, I told you about that months and months ago. So because I mentioned it to him, he goes back and tastes it again. And he's texting me, he's like, man, I don't remember all these different flavors, but it's because his palate has developed more, because I think most of us start out drinking whiskeys or bourbons, like you said, in the early 20s or whenever you pick it up.
Jack,
and it's Jack, Coke,
yeah.
and you're not paying attention to what you're actually drinking. You're not like actively trying
focusing on the
to
nuances.
smell these bourbons or whatever. And so, like you said, I think you can come back to things as your palate develops and pick up different experiences from a bourbon that you didn't get the first time.
And I'll tell you two notes to that. One, obviously palate development. Your palate changes all the time. If you had food with it. I mean, I've sat outside, getting off work and sitting up there eating like a bag of chips, drinking whiskey, and it tastes totally different than it does.
Of course.
'Cause
Or
it
chewing
changes
gum.
or
Right.
anything,
Cigars, anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Cigars. You get a totally different flavor profile. It's so subjective. Just like with wine, any day you open it up, that bottle may be drinking differently than a different day.
Right.
So with whiskey, it's no longer going to age once it gets bottled. That flavor profile is going to remain. But once you open the stopper and you start letting some oxygen in there, you're helping those compounds start to open up. I'll have a lot of people taste something, especially high proof above 110, and maybe taste it right out the gate, like, it's a little too hot. I'm getting more alcohol, not really getting the flavor.
Yeah.
They'll put it up and come back to it, maybe a couple weeks, month or two later, and they're like, wow, I'm getting all these secondary flavors that I didn't get initially. So I always tell people when they're tasting whiskey the first time, first sip, no matter what the proof is, whether it's 80 or 120, it's going to be a shock to your palate, right? If it's the first thing you drank alcohol-wise, you're going to feel it, right? You're going to get some heat. You're going to get some tingling. So you always have to have a couple sips. You got to kind of dial your palate into the whiskey. And then I always tell people from there, once you get a couple sips in, then really sit down and focus on the flavor nuances. What are you smelling? What are you tasting? And then I always like to add a little bit of water. You don't have to necessarily have an eyedropper for it. A lot of times I'll use just a straw at home and just take a straw and just drop a few drops of water. And what that water will do is allow that whiskey to open up and break down the alcohol compounds and start getting more of those secondary flavors and aromas coming out, so you're not getting so alcohol forward. That's the reason why I like to use these Glencairn glasses when I'm tasting whiskey. It kind of brings all the aromas in together, but it's not wide open. You're not just getting all hit in the face with alcohol, especially if you're drinking high-proof whiskey. And that's why you'll usually see whiskey tasters tasting out of some sort of tulipped glass like this.
Yep.
Because you're honing in, you're concentrating all the aromas, but it's not overwhelming you either.
I was at the Bourbon House in New Orleans about a month or so ago, and I got a flight, and that's what they brought out, 3 of them just like that. So
yeah, you could sit and
cool.
taste the same whiskeys. You could probably taste 3 whiskeys at home, and a Glencairn and a standard rocks glass, and had them mixed up and not know which one which, and probably couldn't easily identify the exact same whiskey between the 2 glasses.
Yeah, really?
Just because the way it hits your palate.
Let's talk a little bit about what you brought here. It may be hard for people to see on the camera, and obviously if you're listening on the podcast, you're not going to be able to see it. But let's talk about some of the stuff that you brought in here. You got it here in the back panel here.
Yeah, so let me kind of take you through a little bit. So, like I said, I picked my 100th barrel, this past year in January. Last year, I picked 47 barrels last year alone. So you can see the progression over the last 6 years now. It's started off with, a barrel, then a couple.
Right.
And then like, hey, you need to go find a few more. And then it was like, oh, here we are, right almost at 50 last year.
Yeah.
So all throughout the year, we'll have different barrel selections. So right now I've got, these basically 4 bourbons, 2 ryes, and 1 tequila. And
Okay.
I've got more being bottled every day. So kind of take you through my current lineup. So I've got, this is Old Scout 107. So this is labeled as American whiskey, not bourbon. These were actually 2 bourbons that some is from Tennessee, some is from Indiana. They married together.
Which automatically cancels them out from being a bourbon,
Can't
right?
be a bourbon, right?
So technically it was still bourbon before they blended them. So
Right, but once you blend, that's when you...
they still could call it bourbon if they wanted to,
Okay,
but they
okay.
wanted to have a distinction in their products. Like I've got some bourbon barrels coming in from them as well. So
Okay,
just kind of
okay.
distinguish the blending compared to being single, because they're still bourbons.
Okay.
Just not to get too far off.
Right,
subject,
right.
But like with Maker's Mark, for example, when Maker's Mark 46 first came out, so Bill Samuels, who's now retired up there, his son Rob runs the distillery, but Bill, really charismatic guy. I got to meet him, quite a few years ago and host an event for him, and he was telling me basically, long story short, with Maker's 46, he realized in 50 years he didn't really accomplish anything except for not screwing up his dad's recipe. And he wanted something more to leave behind his legacy than that on his tombstone, as he said.
So he wanted to branch out on his own a little bit.
You know, he was like, well, how do you do that? For 50 years we've told people Maker's Mark, it's right. It's not too old. It's around 6 years old. It's wheat. It's a little bit lower proof. It's all these things that make Maker's Mark what it is. So we came up with Maker's 46. Basically, he was tasting through different stave variations he wanted to finish it in. And when he found the stave 46, well, it was a French stave. So in his mind, it's like, well, now all of a sudden it's not bourbon, right? If we use a secondary stave. But what they came back and said is, look, it's bourbon before you secondary aged it. So it's still bourbon.
Okay.
Because it already met all the requirements to become bourbon. You just secondary stave aged it to finish it.
And so he got something a little unique to himself,
right? Exactly.
Right?
Got a unique, and now you see bourbons finished in wine casks and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But when Maker's 46 first came out, you didn't really see much secondary finishing of bourbons.
Well, they're doing wine now in bourbon
Yeah, I've
bottles.
seen that.
I got a bottle of that at the house, and it's good.
Yeah,
it's really
that,
good.
You pick up a lot of that richness, and a
Yes.
lot of that. You get a little higher alcohol content because again, as you age something in a barrel, whatever you had in there initially is trapped in the wood.
It's gonna
Right? There might
leach
be
into the wood.
another gallon trapped in there. So you've got, if it was whiskey originally, you've got that bourbon age, locked into the barrel. When you age the wine, it washes out, and vice versa.
Okay.
So if you're doing a wine aged bourbon barrels, you get more richness. If you're going the other way and you're doing a bourbon aged in wine barrels, you're going to taste more fruit, and you get those flavor profiles coming out that you find in wine. So it's just kind of a neat way to add on another dimension and level to bourbon. Some people love it, some people are against it. But again, it's
a subjective thing too, right?
You're going to age it in a bourbon barrel, then take it out of that barrel and put it into a. What did you say it was to begin with?
Yeah. So this. You know what this one?
Yeah.
So these guys actually blend whiskeys in this particular product from Indiana and Tennessee. So I think this one was 11 barrel lot. They tasted them, blended them, and then rebarreled them, and then they aged it. On their facility in West Virginia.
When they mix it, that's when they put it back into the other barrel.
Right, and then they put it back in there for about 6 months, and I went up there and tasted them. I actually picked this in the middle of a snowstorm.
That's cool.
Yeah, West Virginia, where Smooth Ambler is out in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Not the easiest place to get to. I've drove there twice now, and when I happen to,
you got to earn that bottle.
Man,
yeah,
sure. I
like that.
Look, if I come here again, it's below zero and snowing. I'm done.
Yeah. You should put a picture of you up there in that snowstorm, tape it to that bottle and have it in the store so
Freeze
people know what you went through to
I
get it. I
almost
right?
was going to call it something to do with snowstorm,
Yeah.
But anyway, it was
the brown
it was a
blizzard.
little chilly out there. We got up there; it was 4 degrees with a wind chill, and by the time we got up to the warehouse, started snowing, so you couldn't see the next warehouse over.
Yeah,
it was probably about negative 15 with the wind chill. So I had to earn that one for sure.
Yeah, you earned it. Yeah.
And like I said, I've got a couple of 5-year-old plus aged bourbons coming out from these guys. We'll start getting in the next few weeks.
Okay.
The next one up is Kentucky Peerless. So this is going to be a rye whiskey. So the predominant grain is going to be rye, not bourbon. So kind of earlier we talked about one of the main regulations to become bourbon, you got to be 51% corn. This is going to be at least 51% rye.
Okay.
With secondary notes of corn and malted barley.
That's one of the rye whiskeys is what I've tasted one or two, and it was a little sweeter than what I liked, but I haven't tried enough to know whether or not I'm into it or not. So
yeah, and for me, like I always tell people always ask me, right, what do you drink at home? And I'm like, well, I've picked 100 barrels now, and I've got every one of them open at home. So for me, and again, with the same thing I talked about with wine earlier, not to get bored with it and keep my palate excited.
Move it around.
Yeah, there's no reason to have the same drink back to back. So very seldom will I have the same pour 2 nights in a row, or even 2. I usually don't have more than 1 at a time. But if I'm going to have multiple, very seldom will be the same bourbon I'm going to sit and drink throughout the night. I'll sit and taste through a variety of different ones.
I don't think I've ever seen that. Yeah, that's cool. So other than somebody like at a restaurant tasting flights, so you're going to say at home you're going to mix one or have over a glass of ice or something like that. Drink that and then go to the next one.
Yeah, I mean,
that's cool.
For me,
that's
what's
cool.
the reason to sit and drink the same one? Unlike a bottle of wine, once you open it, you're pretty much committed to finishing it. You've got a day or two, but it's not going to be the same. With whiskey, you're going to get a little bit of that oxidation opening up, but for the most part, it's not going bad. It's not drastically changing. So why have the same drink back to back?
Yeah,
and I make cocktails at home. Old fashions.
Yeah.
Sometimes I make smoked old fashions. I like Manhattans. I recently played around with a little oak barrel I got and did barrel aged Boulevardiers.
What is that?
So
sounds cool.
You ever heard of a
Sounds
Negroni?
fancy. No.
Okay, so a Negroni is a gin-based cocktail. A Boulevardier, you just switch out gin for bourbon. So, of course, when I first saw it on the menu, I was like, yeah, sign me up.
Okay.
Gin.
Yeah.
Like a mule, when you put bourbon in for a mule. Obviously not the same things,
changed it
but
from
it's
Kentucky
taking a
instead.
traditional drink and
Correct.
mixing a bourbon in with it. Yeah.
So Boulevardier is bourbon. I like to use high rye bourbon. The barrel-aged one I did at home, I actually used my Four Roses, which was a high rye bourbon. 100 proof.
Joey's recently on the Four Roses
I
train.
got on a little Four Roses kick. It's not bad.
I'm a huge Four Roses fan. I pick more barrels from those guys than anybody. So
Yeah.
can't wait for these next 2 to roll in here in the next hopefully the next 2 weeks they'll be in. But I did. So I took this little oak barrel. I dumped in 2 bottles of bourbon of my Four Roses single barrel. I dumped in a bottle of Cappelletti, which is a like a semi-bitter Italian liqueur, and then I dumped in a bottle of Cokie Sweet Vermouth. So 100 ounces went into this barrel. I let it age at my house for 21 days on my bar, and kept tasting it.
Yeah.
Got to where I wanted it. So again, that a little bit of swelling in the oak, marinating all the flavors together, and then I bottled it. And a little off track here, but my bottling, I actually had 20% yield loss. Start with Angel Share, even in that little oak barrel
in your house,
in my house,
not in your
I
garage.
lost 20 ounces.
And that's climate control.
At climate control,
Yeah.
and I soaked the barrel for a week.
Those
and
angels,
dumped it
bro.
multiple times.
They
They
be
be
drinking
drinking,
a lot.
dude. They're drinking. That's why they call it spirits. I don't know.
When you've got something good, they might get a little
Yeah,
greedy there.
There you
no
go.
doubt.
But it was just kind of a fun variation on a cocktail at home. Now if I want to go home and make one, I just I keep the big 2x2 cubes. I'll drop on the glass, pour that over it, and
Yeah. That
fresh
just
squeezed orange. And
question popped in my head. Do you like to use the cubes? I know some people say no ice and use the what are those like the are they
Little
metal
Whiskey
things,
stones.
yeah,
whiskey
you just put 'em
stones?
in
There
the
you go.
old-
Is it preference?
I have this conversation every day also with people. For me, it's all about what I'm in the mood for. Sometimes you want to go home and maybe drink something really big, right? Maybe a big high proof, something 120 plus like Knob Creek single barrels that I pick, something big and robust. Some days you want something more mellow like this Old Forester. Here's one of my favorites. I want something soft. But sometimes you want to take that bigger flavor profile and just cut it down a little bit, just dial it down. So those big 2x2 square cubes are my favorite. They don't melt too quick. If you pour a double over one, let it open up some.
Yeah, and you can get that equipment off of Amazon to make those cubes, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just order
just
cheap,
a standard,
not
like a little 6-pack of
Yep.
square cubes you make at home, keep in your freezer. And I've got whiskey stones. Sometimes I use those.
I can't ever keep them cold.
The
I mean, like the
stones-
first time I make a drink, and
Oh, yeah, they don't last very
They don't
long,
last
yeah.
long at
You have
all.
to
Yeah,
make
I
it
mean,
to
one drink if you're lucky, like you said. Those
Right.
I use them on slight occasion. I've even chilled the glass, over trying to use the stones if I wanted to go just a chilled.
Do you like to chill bourbon? Like actually put it in the freezer at all?
I never do personally.
Okay,
no.
okay.
I'm either drinking it, room temperature straight, or again, like I said, over ice, or making a cocktail.
Right. I would think colder would maybe make it have less taste, right? Because it's
does.
holding everything in.
So that when I'm up tasting barrels when it's freezing cold,
Yeah.
that's another part of the problem.
You gotta take
can't
it
wear
into
gloves.
consideration,
You
yeah.
got to be able to warm the whiskey up with your hands. Now I will tell you, like when I picked this one, I mean, when you're up there and it's negative 15ish with the
No.
wind chill, it's a little much trying to warm the whiskey up. Eventually I couldn't feel my hands anymore, and so I had to
Okay,
go
we're gonna
to
have to take a time out, guys. Yeah.
just
I got
trying
a
to
heater.
hold
Yeah.
it in my mouth to warm it up. But again, I wanted to make sure I was able to get the flavor profiles correct. I take it real serious when I go up there. I take notes on everything. I spit everything out.
Yeah.
Like I said, for me, it's a big deal to go out and find the right barrel, something special for all my customers to
That's
enjoy.
awesome, man.
So,
I hope people can appreciate what you're saying
Yeah.
there, man. That's a lot of work rather than just sitting there and ordering something, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people take things from sample kits too. They might send you in 3 samples. You just taste one and pick it that way. But to me, the commitment for me is, my customers are committed to coming to see me over all the stores out there. So for me, I feel I owe them that commitment to make the trip up
Putting
there.
the legwork
I
in.
drove the first, I don't know, almost 30 times going up there. And I've just recently started flying just to not spend so much time away from home.
Yeah.
Away from the kids and business and everything. So, but I love going up there. It never gets old. Meeting these guys. I've been fortunate to taste with almost every master distiller. That's been around the last 7 or 8 years. Jimmy and Eddie Rutledge at Wild Turkey.
That's cool to know him by name.
yeah.
You're sitting in the
Jimmy
bar
and
drinking like,
Eddie
yeah, I
Russell,
know him.
And Jim Rutledge at Four Roses was the original master distiller. Now Brent Elliott, who's been there quite a few years. I've been really fortunate to taste with all these guys, and hear the stories firsthand. Like talking to Jimmy up at Wild Turkey, he's like, look, all these years we've had such a hard time getting people to want to taste bourbon, and we just kept panning it to them like, have another one to grow to like it, and here we are 40 years later.
Now it's finally paid off.
Bourbon's on top of the world.
It really is. It really has in the past. What would you say? 5?
Yeah, definitely 5. I mean, maybe 7, 8, but really
Right.
the last 5 years for sure.
Yeah, I think there's all these lifestyle brands that promote it and have it in their photos and stuff like
That's a
that.
big deal.
It
Yeah,
creates awareness, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And people get so caught up on brand names. And look, you got to get caught up on flavor profile. Like, what do you like? And,
Right.
there's so much out there.
I think people don't know, and I think they don't know to ask that because I know I wasn't.
No.
I'm just gonna go in there and buy the thing
Yeah,
that I
why
always
would I
know,
want to drink
right,
and
you
go
know?
home?
That's why you do a lot of bourbon tastings, which is a good thing, right? To get people an opportunity to come in and try some stuff.
I do. I try to. I love getting out and doing them. For me, it's a time issue mostly. But like we're doing one tomorrow night over at the District in Gulfport. We're doing a bourbon and cigar pairing.
Yes.
we do different wine dinners at places. So I love getting out there and doing them. For me, like I said, it's just kind of a time constraint with being a small business owner and husband and dad. So, but I love it.
What do we got going back over here to your wall here? We got the.
So in the middle here is going to be Old Forester single barrel.
Yeah.
So this is going to be one that's cut down to proof. So it's 90 proof. So when I'm picking something I know is going to cut down that low in proof, I'll usually request them to find me more flavorful barrels, or when I taste them, I'm looking for ones that got bigger flavor. So when we cut them with water, they don't get thin on the back end.
Right.
And what I really like about this one, like I went to a Mardi Gras event the other night, and that's what I took with me. A ton of flavor. Take a cup, fill it up with ice, and pour a good 5 or 6 ounces in there, and enjoy the evening. And then the next one here, if people can see it, so this is Whistle Pig. So these guys are actually in Vermont. Dave Pickerel, who recently passed away, this was his kind of baby project up there.
I hear Whistle Pig a lot when people start talking about bourbons.
We've seen on your website a ton.
Yeah, we just recently got him in Mississippi in the fall, and I've been talking to these guys for 4 or 5 years now about picking a barrel out. So they agreed. I got to actually pick. If you can turn it around, you can kind of see the back label there for people that are watching it.
Oh yeah.
So my dad does the artwork on the labels, so that's When Pigs Fly, because we finally got it here in Mississippi.
Okay.
So we try to have a little fun. We always try to have a label that kind of relates to either the flavor profile or something special about the bottling. So this is actually a little over 11 years old, cash strength at 115.3. And it is one. It's got a lot of big flavor. So rye, you're gonna get more spice, more baking spices. Some people find rye to have a little bit of kind of dry astringentness to it. For me, this particular one, I'm a big fan of drinking this in a double over big cube of ice.
Okay. Again, like I said, I want to get into the ryes. I just haven't yet. It's on the list.
Just different flavor profile. Wheat, you're gonna get softer. Rye, you're gonna get more spice. And I've got a lot of customers that are making cocktails and said they really enjoyed it with this as well, because it's got such a big flavor profile.
Okay.
And then the last one over here is actually a tequila barrel I picked out, Maestro Dobel Diamante. It is actually a reposado tequila. So reposado means aged under 1 year, usually 6 to 9 months, and then it's filtered back out clear. So what I thought was kind of cool, and this has got a specific French oak finish and everything, but what I liked about it when I tasted it, when I had the opportunity, I've had a few consumers ask me about doing other barrels. I did a rum barrel last year, and I'm a bourbon drinker, but I'm having a little bit of fun kind of finding some other unique things.
Yeah.
So I tasted these samples, and I really liked this one. And matter of fact, I tried it, tasted it straight, and actually I had my wife taste it as well, and she really enjoyed, for the same reason I did with this one. It had kind of a nice creaminess to it because it's reposado, so it's barrel aged like bourbon. And most other products worldwide are aged in used bourbon barrels because you can only use them once.
Right.
So kind of touched on earlier being one-time use. So they send them out all over the world for everything else to age in.
I got you.
And then they filter back out clear. So what you get is this kind of nice mid-palate structure, creaminess to it, a little bit of spice, and then it's just really clean and crisp on the back end. And we actually tried it straight, tried it over ice, and actually just tried it with a squeeze of fresh lime, and it just made a really nice. I could see making some really killer, refreshing cocktails with it.
I think tequila around here, most people think of the stuff they go in and get at a restaurant that's low end, more low end stuff. It's either mixed with a ton of sugar and it's either frozen margaritas, right? And that's a thing, and that's fun.
Yeah.
But I have had some what I guess I would call more top shelf and higher end, even higher end margaritas are really good. But tequila, that's another good something to try if you're looking for something new. You know what I mean? Don't think of it. Yeah, I've had tequila before. Like there's other stuff out there that it's different flavor profiles that go give it a shot.
I tell people they're sipping tequila and they're like, no, I can't be. I'm like, no, there's tequilas that you actually would drink. You drink in a Glencairn or a Snifter, that have got that flavor complexity. They're extra aged añejos that are a couple years old, where they really get that secondary flavor from the barrel.
I think most people think of tequila. It's that last shot at about 3 a.m. when you're about to let's do a shot, and then that ends.
I don't even want to look at it.
That's different. That's a whole different ballgame. We're not talking about that.
Which you can get into that same trouble with any product.
That's true.
That's true.
Young and dumb.
So you got two out front here that we talked about. We're gonna actually taste. And what are these two here?
So these two. So this one's kind of a fun one right here. So this is Town Branch. These guys are a small distillery out of Lexington, Kentucky, kind of up in the northeast. They've only done a couple of barrels nationwide, mainly with big Kentucky retailers. So the guy who's the rep down in this area, he's been buying my barrel picks the last year or so, really likes what I'm doing, appreciates my palate, and basically got me in to go up there and pick some barrels. So got to pick the first barrels from Mississippi. So the back, you can kind of see we've got this custom Maisono's first barrel sticker. This one's also cask strength at 56 or 112 proof. And I won't tell you more about the flavor profile. We'll kind of taste it and see what you guys think.
So you don't only sell, I mean, you sell these out to other people, right? Your barrel picks, not only do you sell them in your store, but you sell them out to other people.
We
as
do.
well.
There's actually quite a few bars and restaurants all on the Gulf Coast here that you can find our barrels at. So if you go in, you see, hand select barrel, especially if you see Maisonos on the menu. It's if it just says single barrel, it's probably likely coming from us, but definitely if it says Maisonos. White Pillars buys all of our barrel picks. Mosaic in downtown.
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of bars and restaurants all over, even some of the casinos that put my hand selects behind the bar when they're looking for something.
That's got to feel good,
cool,
right?
Yeah.
That's got to feel good.
Yeah, it makes it a lot of fun, and it gives people the opportunity to go out and taste them,
right?
In a smaller portion,
right,
and have some fun with them as well.
Yeah.
Right. And then what did we talk about this one?
So then the second one here is Elijah Craig. So this one's cut to proof also to 94. If you notice, it's everything. So on all of our bottles, it'll always say Maisono somewhere on the label. This one's kind of small, but it says Maisono's aged 11 plus years. So I wasn't exactly sure when they were going to get around to bottling this one and what the age was going to be. I knew it'd be close to 12. By the time it actually got bottled, it ended up being 12 and a half years old. So here, like we'll talk about the old.
It's at least 11.
Yeah, it's at least 11 for sure. Whatever the youngest whiskey in the bottle is, you got to have on the label. So if you're doing a blend, if you're going to put the age, you have to have the youngest labeled on there.
I got you.
So this has got a lot of big, rich flavor. Even the proof is lower in that one. I think we're going to taste the Town Branch first.
Okay.
Just because it kind of has more nuances to it, where the Elijah Craig's going to have more kind of big.
One of the
flavors.
things that you mentioned, I want to ask before we taste these. Give us a little bit about the difference between 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, 15, and on up. Obviously, it's numerically different, but what does that do as far as the flavor profiles for these bourbons?
Yeah, so every year it goes by, you're going through more of those hot and cold seasons. You're getting more push and pull in and out of the barrel. So essentially you're getting more evaporation, you're getting more concentration of flavor, which isn't always a good thing.
Right.
I've had a lot of older whiskeys that were just too much. I won't name it by brand, but I've had some that people are like, can't wait to get their hands on, some of these 18-year-old plus bourbons, and they're so oak forward. For me, you lose all the other nuances, and you lose all the complexities and the special flavors, especially what I'm looking for in single barrels. So,
again, subjectivity though, right? Some people may say that's all that is what I want.
Right. And now in the same token, I've also had some killer, 20-year plus bourbons. So it's all about the way that particular barrel interacts with the whiskey. And again, it's not. Just like wine, not everything's meant to age, in bottle. In whiskey, not everything's meant to age too long in barrel. A lot of master distillers, if you ask them, will probably tell you more of 7 to 10, 12 years maybe is really kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Where you still can taste the mash bill, and the white dog going in. And then you still get those secondary complexities from the barrel, but it's not all wood that you're getting.
Okay. Let's dive in.
7 to 10 years. That's a sweet spot.
I think that's a pretty good range.
All right.
And again, like I said, I've picked some barrels out that were just a couple years old that were outstanding. So it's all about finding that barrel variance and the one that stands out.
Well, if people are listening to this, or the people that are listening to this, I would say, would you agree with this statement? It's like, look, get out of your comfort zone a little bit, try something new. And if you're into bourbons, and even if you're not, maybe you've never had them before and you think you don't like them or whatever, they can come in your store and you can point them in the right direction and kind of help them stick one foot in the pool, maybe. Kind of ease their way in.
For me, that's my passion, is getting the opportunity to talk to people, find out what you like, and I'll be honest, 9 out of 10 people can't describe why they like what they like, or what it is they like about it. That's my job, is to kind of help decipher that. So as long as you can give me some kind of starting points of things you've had that you really liked, and a couple things maybe you had that you disliked, and a little bit about why, we can kind of start that journey together of me helping you find new products to enjoy.
I know just from my experience, your first time trying something new, you don't have context really, maybe. So it's going to take a little while if you got, if you keep trying it to figure out, oh, okay, wow, now I really understand the difference between this type of bourbon or this brand or this age or whatever flavor profile, and then figure out what you do like. Yeah,
it's no different than food. If you're trying a new food for the first time, you want to go somewhere where they specialize in making that type of cuisine, not where it's like an afterthought, a buffet, because you're not getting a true experience of what that is.
Yeah.
Same thing I tell people: if you're just starting out with wine, you don't want to sit and drink, a big, maybe high alcohol Cabernet or something big and full body, like in the middle of July in the afternoon at a picnic, right? It's not that the circumstances aren't lining you up for success there that you're going to enjoy it. It's the same thing with whiskey. I always say, you don't necessarily want to start off big, high proof, big oak forward. You kind of got to build yourself up to it. So we try to start people out maybe on wheat bourbons or something a little bit lower in proof, maybe around 90.
Yeah.
See what you think, and then kind of go from there and grow what you're looking for.
Yeah.
All right. Walk us through the
How does
tasting this. Yeah,
process take place?
Put some air in it, right?
Yeah, you want
Switch
to get
around.
a little air, but you also, not like a glass of wine when you're smelling it, you're kind of taking big, deep breaths. With whiskey, you kind of want to have more short bursts. It'll tell you kind of like a dog, right? You don't want to fry your senses.
I think I fried mine.
Is high, so you want to kind of go a little bit more subtle. Kind of pass back and forth. You kind of want to hit both sides of your nose. The different sides of your nose pick up because your connection to your brain, different aromas.
Okay,
that's crazy.
So you want me to kind of take you through what I get out of this? So, so for me, right up front, I get you get some of that sweet caramel. You
I did
smell
sweet.
You get that that barrel flavor, but I also get some dark fruit in this one. I get some dark cherry. Just something that you get the oak, but it's not all oak forward there. It's not all brown sugar or caramel.
I stopped at sweet. That's about as far as I can take it right now.
I get the little vibrancy in there on the nose.
Smells really good. I can tell you that.
So then from there, when you go to taste it, you want to take a little bit in and then kind of draw it across your palate, kind of bring some air across it, and get it all around your mouth. And like I said, you don't want to judge too much on the first sip because it's going to be, it's 112 proof. We kind of want to get your palate accustomed to it and then go back for the second sip and then kind of go from there what you're tasting.
Small sip.
Yeah, just a small sip, just enough to kind of go over your palate.
Okay. The sweet caramel, I can definitely pick that up.
Yeah, I taste that for sure.
So for me, I mean, obviously not my first time drinking this one.
Right.
I really like it. It's unique. Like I said, I get that kind of sweetness up front. I get some dark cherry, and then kind of after that fruit dissipates, maybe even a little black raspberry, I kind of get like this roast coffee note.
Yeah.
And then on the back end, there's something that really stood out to me in this barrel. There's almost like a little bit of like a refreshing, almost like a spearmint spice.
Yeah,
that just hints,
it's sitting like in the middle of my tongue right now.
Kind of when you have something like with some wintergreen, you kind of get that refreshing.
Like I just brushed my teeth.
Yeah. Just a hint.
But
of
it takes time.
Yeah,
for that to set in.
It's got to grow.
It's weird.
It's kind of cool. Like I said, you get that kind of sweetness up front, and then you kind of get this dark complexity, and then it kind of goes into this just kind of a cool, lingering, refreshing spice note in there.
Yeah, you're not going to get that if you smash it with Coke and drink it real quick in a barroom setting. So this is definitely a different approach.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just, for me, it's fun to find those nuances. And there's different days you may go back and retaste this, like I said, and get different flavors and aromas out of it.
Yeah, I like it.
The second sip's better, like you were saying. That's good.
It's really good.
So like I said, I was really excited to get to be not only the first in Mississippi, but one of the few around the country to have barrels from Town Branch. Unfortunately, we're already sold out of it, but on the same trip when I picked this back in November, I picked out a malt whiskey.
Okay.
So it was all malted barley in there, so no corn or rye or anything. They just happened to let me taste some barrels. I tasted one and said, oh, man, I love this.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to buy it. And they said, well, you can't buy this particular barrel.
Well, then why didn't
What do you mean I can't
why do you let me have it?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it's a really short, for whatever reason, most of the whiskey evaporated out of this particular barrel. So this barrel of malt whiskey we got in only yielded 40 bottles, which is ridiculous. It was 8.5 years old, also cask strength.
You're going to sell that for a nice little nickel, huh?
Well, it actually was the same price as this one. We sold it. It was a 1-bottle limit per customer. We sent it out by email, and basically that was the one we sold it, and it was gone in a couple days. But I wanted to get it in front of the right people. Again, it wasn't bourbon. It was a malt whiskey.
Okay.
There's a couple here in the U.S., like Stranahan's and Rua. It's kind of the American version of drinking scotch. It was just kind of a cool whiskey, something unique. So I get to have some fun and pick out some fun things like that along the way as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like it. I give that one a thumbs
Yeah,
up.
that was good. That little spearmint or whatever it meant, whatever that tingle is on the tongue, that's crazy.
Yeah, I try to be careful kind of describing it to people because sometimes they
Yeah,
get...
it's not spearmint.
Yeah,
it's
but
just,
they get nervous.
Right.
It's just this hint.
Yeah.
I picked a Knob Creek rye barrel last year, and I named it Cinnamon Spice Bomb. And caught a lot of backlash over the cinnamon thing. Because people are, oh, it's like Fireball. I'm like, no, it's not even. Never even crossed my mind. Because when you get rye, you get a lot of baking spices. And anyway, so
what's
kind
your
of a marketing
just a
lesson
little
there.
quick aside note here? What's your take on all the flavored whiskeys and stuff like that with the Crown Royal Peach and the apple and the? I mean, are you into any of that? For me, it's not. I haven't been able really to get into it.
Not for me. I mean, it's not something I'm going to go home and drink. But I do taste them. I mean, I taste a couple days a week, at work because I need to know, right? Like if you're coming and telling me you like this, like what is it about and why someone's gravitated toward that. But there's a place for everything. For me, at least it's getting people the opportunity to taste something whiskey.
Right.
And then maybe if you graduate into cocktails, if you get some good mixologists.
That's an art in and of itself, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a big difference between making a Jack and Coke and sitting and making a proper Manhattan.
I've been
or
I've been to
and-
places a lot around here that great bartenders, and then you go to something like what you would call maybe a mixologist or something. The guy's just different. And there was one in Hattiesburg, a particular bartender, and he just did all kind of extra stuff, little extra things. And when he'd make you a drink, it was like, Jesus, man, this is different.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah, and it makes a big difference. You're using quality ingredients,
And that's the kicker too.
Most of the places you're going to see Maisono hand-select bourbons being served, especially if it's a lot of them.
Yeah.
They've got pretty strong people behind the bar. They
Yeah.
make some really good cocktails, having some fun with it, doing something different. And they also know too, like when they taste something like this, how to accent those flavors with maybe the right bitters or vermouth when you're making a cocktail, and kind of build on that. So
That's
That's
awesome.
cool.
So should we rinse this with a little water, or do you just go right into the next one? How do you normally like to do it?
we'll go ahead and go into the next one.
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
do
so
it.
the next one will be a little bit lower proof, but it's again, over twice the age, and you're a lot more oak richness.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and pour on to the next one.
Let's try
So a little bit more about this one. So there was 217 bottles we got out of this particular barrel. So like I said, there's a lot of fluctuation when you're going cash strength. I've gotten barrels. Like I said, I picked one that only had 40 bottles out of that barrel.
How much
so
you normally put in there? I don't want to pour it.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
I'll pour it just a little
If
bit.
you don't mind.
That's pretty good.
Fill up half the glass. Yeah. We're gonna
that
be here.
good?
We're gonna be here for a minute,
Yeah.
boys. We gotta figure it
On
out.
to the next episode.
Yep, exactly. While you're doing that, I got another question for you.
Sure.
Storage at home. Okay, obviously it's going to be inside in your air conditioned, hopefully home, right? Does light? Because I've recently joined some Facebook groups of some whiskey bourbon people. Does light matter as much? Is that getting a little too technical? I mean,
It's always better to have less light, right? Less light, less heat, whether it be wine or whiskey. It's still
so heat more important than light? Is that
yeah. I mean, it's still going to affect it long term a little bit.
Okay.
Again, it's more subtle in whiskey than it is in wine. I mean, my prized bottle of whiskey at home is a 1979 Wild Turkey in a crystal decanter that my dad bought back in 1979 from our family store in Connecticut.
Dude, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So like that's what I got when I turned 21, and that's what I drink. My birthday's Christmas Eve, and I'll usually have a pour. I drink it real sparingly.
Yeah.
Anniversaries to the store, and that whiskey tastes delicious.
Dude, that's awesome.
Put together Christmas gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, as the years have gone by for the children, it's definitely not something you want to have too high proof bourbon. So
Yeah.
I learned that lesson the hard way. Especially if you got something with like 100 different decals you're putting on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And you
good
gotta
to
be,
see
you
how
gotta be up
bourbons
at
are
you gotta be up
actually-
at daylight on the
Yeah.
25th.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right. So what we got here?
All right, so next up, this is the most recent Elijah Craig single barrel at Maisono's. Again, it's aged, it says 11 plus years, but it's actually about 12 and a half years old. So right away in this one, you get more oak. You get more of that, brown sugar, wood spice.
The brown sugar. There you go.
And again, that's all that extra maturation.
I was gonna
and
say
everything
it's
there.
more caramelly,
Yep,
but
you-
brown
right
sugar
away
is
in
a,
the
is a
nose.
better way to say that.
Usually we taste by proof, but because we're just tasting these two, kind of wanted to show you guys the difference between something a little bit younger, but yet a lot of complexity to it, and something that's got more age.
Well, it's cool for me to have someone like you though to be able to say that because again,
Yeah.
I was being funny, but I really would in my mind I said that's more caramelly. But when you said brown sugar, then boom, it's like that's what it is. It's brown sugar.
Just have somebody
yeah,
to point it
caramel as
out.
well.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying and point it out. I know when I got some of the flights at the Bourbon House, they kind of give you some of the flavors that you could taste or whatever, and for me that helped a little bit too.
Yeah, so for me, I'm always kind of leery about giving too much information.
I understand.
I hate some people
Understand.
that proof too, because a lot of people get turned off. It's going to be hot. I'm like, well, just taste it first.
Right.
So a lot of times I like to give people just basic information, let them taste it, and then kind of see what they think, and then kind of walk them through the process and explain why.
It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And what makes that stand out. And again, for me, with this one, most of my Elijah Craigs I picked have been on the younger side. The last one was just under 9 years old because I like the vibrancy. This particular one, I thought it had nice oak richness, but it wasn't, again, overpowering.
Okay.
Um,
Have we jumped in yet? Has anybody jumped
No,
in?
haven't
Let's
jumped
jump
in.
in.
but again, for me, that's what it's all about, tasting through the barrels and finding the right one and the way those specific complexities and flavors are.
That's totally different. It's got
Completely.
totally different taste. That's smooth.
I got to look back on the proofs again. So this is a little bit.
So 94 on the Elijah Craig,
Yeah.
112 on the Town
Okay.
Ranch.
Of course. There you go.
And like I said, normally I would taste based off of proof, but because we're kind of in a shorter time
Oh,
frame
yeah,
here,
yeah.
and I wanted to I was afraid if we tasted this Elijah Craig first, that the oak richness would take away from those nuances of Town Branch. We'd miss those more subtle flavor characteristics.
I don't know, man. I feel like once you get that bourbon taste, man, that's hard to beat. That's very hard to beat. I love this stuff.
And it's incredible, like I said, how different they are, and
Yeah.
like so when you taste them out of barrel side by side, or if you taste multiple of my hand selects, every now and then we'll do a tasting. Maybe we'll break out like 5 different Four Roses, and at an event. The problem is we don't keep any back stock. So for me, when the barrels come in, we recently had 2 barrels out in 6 hours, the 2-bottle limit by our email list. So some of them are only there for a couple hours. Some might last a couple months. I never know how long they're going to last, but we don't hold anything back. So once they're gone, they're gone.
I like that. I like that style.
I take a couple bottles home for myself. Sometimes you'll see stores that might have something 6 months, a year, 2, 3 years later. I mean, they're not going to be around that long.
I was super impressed with your store. It looks great, man. It's got a good flow to it. Yeah, it's packed. It's got a lot of selection. The email list, man. Where can people jump on that? And, and what's that all about? Obviously, you're demoing and telling people when you get stuff in the store.
Yeah. So anytime you're in the store, you can opt in and sign up for our email list. And basically, we'll let you know when we do tastings, events, barrel releases. On barrels that are short yields, or say like Buffalo Trace products where there's really high demand, something like that malt whiskey. We'll send them out by email before they ever go out on the shelf and give our customers first opportunity to buy them.
I love that.
Yeah,
We've got people coming from 6 different states now for our single barrels. So
like a little VIP service going on.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to make sure that people, for me, it's all about trying to get the whiskey in the right hands. You hear about all the allocated bourbons and people chasing them. And, fortunately, a lot of people want to buy them to resell them, which is just driving up the price in the secondary market for all of us that want to go home and drink them.
That's right.
So.
That's right. Yeah. You do stuff with the Bourbon Society over here at the Rack House?
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do events over there.
Yeah, that's another good opportunity. People that are listening, man. If you want to get it and meet some people that are into this and that can maybe either you can teach some, learn from, all the way around. They have a bourbon. Is it called the Bourbon Society? Yeah, Bourbon Society at the Rack House in Gulfport. Go on their Facebook page or online and join in there. And you've done some demonstrations up there, right?
We've had some great tastings over there. And like I said, it's always fun to get the opportunity to get in front of people. And one thing I miss as a retailer is I don't get to see people's reaction as they taste the product,
right?
And kind of walk them through the experience and share that with them.
Those events, I'm assuming, give you that.
Yeah, it's same thing working on the restaurant side, right? You get the opportunity firsthand to be in front of people, which I love,
right?
But like I said, being a small business owner, it's also nice to be home. At one point I had my own restaurant too, and I don't need 100+ hour work weeks. So
yeah, that's
good
tough,
to sleep.
Man.
Trying to rein them in 65, 70-ish hours a week.
Dude, I totally understand that.
No doubt.
Man, this was a good one. I really enjoyed this.
Excellent.
I very much appreciate you coming, stopping by, and doing this with us. If people, the people that are listening here, where can they find you? Like, what's the best way? Online. I'm sure you got a presence there. How can they reach out?
Yeah, so if you want to find us, you can find us on the internet. Pretty much, if you put in Maisono's or Bourbon,
it's going to come up.
But it's maisonosfinewine.com. So it's MAISANO''S.
Maisono's.
It's Maisono.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's how you spell Maisono's. We're in Ocean Springs, just across the bridge here from Biloxi. We're right on the south side of Highway 90. We're in the shopping center where Aztec is getting ready to open up. In between
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. They're going to open up in about 2 weeks. We're our new neighbors.
Y'all slammed.
Yeah.
They're
if it's anything like the one over in Gaucher, that place is always packed.
And they're actually planning to have some more hand-select bourbons right next door there as well. There's a ton of great bars downtown. But yeah, we're right there in the Oak Shopping Center. Like, we've been there 15 years now. We've got over 1,600 wines on hand.
Yep. We need to come in and talk wine one day.
Sure.
We'll just do wines.
I love talking about wine.
It's not brown, but we like to drink it too, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, if it's older.
That's right.
And then we've got about 700 spirits. Like I said, 200 whiskeys at all time. I've picked 15 barrels so far this year. Like I said, I've got these 7 on hand right now. We've got multiple barrels getting ready to come in the next few weeks. I just had a Knob Creek get bottled. Just had a couple of Russell Reserve and Wild Turkey get bottled. I got my first Smooth Amblers getting ready to get bottled. I picked back in November. 4 Roses. I've got 100 proof and a barrel strength. So we've got lots of great barrels coming.
You got a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge at the store, I can tell. So that means a lot for people, because you can go buy stuff anywhere, but to get an experience, to get somebody that walk you through the process, and then have some of this special hand-selected stuff that you can't get anywhere else, that's legit.
Yeah, and if people go online, look us up on Facebook, you get an opportunity to see not only about the single barrels, but just kind of some overview of the store, what we do, different events, and it's been a lot of fun over the past 15 years, and plan to do it till the day I can't do it anymore, to keep sharing the story and the passion and help people find the right products, continue to grow our selection, and plenty of great single barrels to come.
That's awesome, man. Let's not make this a one-off. Let's do it again. Like we said, bring some wine in and some more bourbons or whatever. Maybe we'll even get a couple people in here and make it a to-do. Thanks again, man, so much for stopping by. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and until the next one, we'll see you then.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.